My name is Patricia Arlene Gorczyca, and it is July 6th, 2018. I was born in Denver, Colorado on December 24th, 1941. I grew up in Denver. I did grow up in Denver. It was called a cow town. It was a city that was growing, but it had a lot of cattle, and there was a rodeo and things like that, so it was still a big city. And I don't know, I lived all over town, so I never really thought about how it was growing up. I was fine. Well, there were distinct parts of Denver. There was northeast, southwest, as the high schools were, and actually I was partial to South Denver, but I spent a lot of my time in North Denver and some of it in East Denver because I lived with different people. My father's name was Harry Yeager, and he died when I was 5 months old. And my mother's name, obviously at that time, her name was Olita May, but everybody called her Kitten. I was called a Pearl Harbor baby because Pearl Harbor was December 7th and I was born December 24th. So it was wartime. My mother actually was like Rosie the Riveter. She actually worked on airplanes. And that's one of the reasons, and because my dad died, she had to find someone to take care of me. So those people were in North Denver, and she didn't live close to where I lived. It was, little kids, they sort of don't pay attention, or I didn't. I just did whatever I had to do and didn't really think much about it because I was taken care of. The people that Mother found to take care of me were Auntie and Uncle George, and they took care of children, but they didn't take care of a lot. And I actually ended up living with them off and on between 1 year old and 17. So I was in and out of their lives, and they were in and out of my life. She found them in the newspaper, someone that could take care of a child. And she actually had to ride the streetcar to North Denver from South Denver. She didn't do really well on streetcars, but she did it because she had to, because they kind of wobble back and forth. Even though there were various times I didn't live with her, I realized that I'm always saying, Mother taught me this, don't do this, do that. So she had a really large impact. The real thing is good manners. She was really into manners, dressing correctly. She grew up a farm girl, and she wanted to be a city girl. And so there's a big difference. And she was my mother was always young. I can remember when I was pregnant. That's hopping ahead a little bit. She didn't want me to call her grandma, because she was too young to be grandma. And that's actually how she became Gigi to you guys, a younger name. But she was fine. She was very strict. But she made me dresses. Shirley Temple was a big deal when I was a little girl, and my mother dressed me up, and I had curly hair, and so people would think, according to my mother, that I was Shirley Temple, because that's how she made me, and I had blonde hair, curly blonde hair, and all the pretty dresses that she made for me. Made me dresses. I took piano lessons. I wanted to take piano lessons. She said, if you want to take piano lessons, you're going to have to practice, and I did. I would just always practice the piano without being told. The first thing I really remember is I remember going to a wedding, but I didn't know whose it was. And years later, I realized it was my mother because she remarried. So she remarried when I was 3 years old. And so instead of a Yeager, I became a Stafford. And it wasn't official. I didn't get adopted until years later, but I grew up a Stafford. as you get older, like I am, kind of figure things out. He was the father figure because that was from age 3 for about 10 years. He was daddy for about 10 years. But he really wasn't a father figure because he had Asperger's. I figured that out. I diagnosed him, when he was very elderly. And that's why he didn't socialize too well. He was an electronic boy. He worked on ham radios and everything. But we did things because Mother worked at a department store. So on the weekends, we'd go to the park and climb trees or go down to the railroad track and walk on the railroad tracks and watch the old trains. So we did those kinds of things and spent time at the library. I didn't even know you could check a book out at the library. We went to the library on Saturday and he'd take me to the children's library and then he'd disappear for the day because he was in a different place in the library. So at the end of the day, I used to hide my book behind other books so that when I came back next week, I could pick it up and read it. And it was usually there. Oh, then I lived someplace else too. I lived with Olivia and Pearl. And this was after she had married Daddy, but I told you Daddy was a little unusual. So Daddy went off to White Sands, Wichita, I think, and he followed the dog races. But Olivia and Pearl rented rooms out. And so we had a couple of rooms that we went, and when I came home from school, I would play Chinese checkers with Olivia. And then upstairs, and in the summer, I was there in the summer too. But I had a cot in the kitchen, and we shared the bathroom with other people. And I remember I had a fish. I called Popeye, and I was really upset because I had to clean my fish bowl. And, I had to clean it and be really neat. And then there were other people that needed to use the bathroom. So just kind of a different, I haven't even thought about that for years. I was an only child, but I wasn't a lonely child. Or I don't remember being lonely, but I do know I lined up all my stuffed animals and things when I crawled in bed at night, and I'd crawl in right in between them, because they were lined up on either side. And then I play in the basement and just make up games, skip around and think I was the leader of the gang. And Mother did tell me that we lived in a neighborhood at one time that was all little boys, and she always said I was the boss. That's just the way it worked out. I was always happy. I don't remember not being happy. I remember waiting a lot for different things. The Staffords owned a business, and I didn't know what they were doing at the time, but now I know on Saturdays or whenever they had to go around and make collections because people wouldn't pay their bills. And so what do you do with Patsy when Mother's working and Daddy's working in another state or whatever? Well, one of the uncles, take me around, and I just spent a lot of time. And once in a while it was Daddy, but I spent a lot of time in the car waiting. But I didn't I read a lot of comic books, and these were fun comic books, like Little Lulu, ones you wouldn't even know about, and Donald Duck and things like that. I'd never read any things that would be like the space people or adventure people. I never read those kind of things. I know there was a piano recital that I did so well at when I was younger that the teacher had me play at a second recital, and I was with the big kids, which played at the end, because they played better. So that was kind of a good memory. But what my mother remembers, because Daddy and I were always making faces at each other, and I remember making the curtsy with my pretty dress, I don't remember sticking my tongue out at him as I walked down the aisle. And of course my mother was mortified because she's the lady with the gloves, and you know, you don't act like that. So that, you know, that's a memory, you know, one memory. A crazy memory, because I thought of it the other day and it was really dumb, was a skit in junior high. And we made it up, and it was to elect officers for something or whatever. Anyway, for some reason, it had to do with bowling. And I was the bowling ball because I was active, somersaults and things like that. So the bowling ball did somersaults across the stage, and I almost went off the stage. So I can't remember, but a teacher or somebody grabbed me. So that's pretty goofy. I remember crazy things like that. I had a couple bad accidents, but when my mother was in California one time visiting her folks, and that was probably, I never thought about it, but that was probably one of those uneasy times because that was shortly before Mother and Daddy got a divorce. But it was a Saturday and Daddy was home and I was fixing breakfast, and we kept our grease in a bottle we kept it, the grease in the pan, the bacon grease, and then we poured it in a bottle to pour it off that was kept in the refrigerator. And I got the bottle out of the refrigerator and was pouring the hot grease into it. And of course the glass broke and the grease just went all over my hands, and my skin from my hands was hanging between my fingers. And I didn't know it was my skin. But obviously I started to scream. And Daddy, who was very practical, there were instructions inside the cupboard door, so I can remember him. I'm in awful pain. And people say you're supposed to put something on top of it. He read it and said, no, put it in cold water and go to the doctor. So that's what he did, and that took all the pain away. If you put your really third-degree burns in the water, and they were wrapped up for months, literally. So I did end up falling and biting my tongue almost off, so that was traumatic. Yeah, poor Mother. She saw that I was bleeding, and then she saw my tongue hanging. I guess she just threw something in my mouth, and it happened to her several times because I had lots of accidents. She'd get me to the hospital, and then she'd pass out. But yeah, I cut my tongue, and I had to have stitches in my tongue. Your teeth are sharp, and I just did that. Actually ended up taking the school bus, not the school bus, the city bus, from where I lived with Olivia and Pearl, and it was actually southeast Denver, and I took the city bus all the way across Denver every day to go to school when I was in the 4th grade. It was a time of prejudice, and you know, I didn't understand it, but I grew up with all these slang terms and everything, and I would listen for them, and but I didn't repeat them, and so you just kind of absorb things. I think I did a lot of absorbing. I didn't talk about it, but I kind of checked things out. But sometimes the bus would stop in downtown Denver because it was going to the barn. Of course, I was going to school, and so they'd just drop me off downtown on Skid Row, and I'd get the next bus that came, but it was safer times. And sometimes when I came home from school at night, this is when Daddy got back and was working in downtown Denver, he'd end up getting on the same bus, and he wouldn't even know I was there because people were standing, but I would find him and everything, so we'd end up on the same bus when I came. And it'd be dark, because by then it would be nighttime. I don't know that I was as curious as one would have thought I would be. Like, spending so much time on the bus, I would look out at a lot of things, and I think I probably made up stories in my mind about the kind of people that lived in different houses because you went through different areas. So it was a varied experience. I went to a different elementary school basically every year, and I went to 3 different high schools. So I was Patsy. I wouldn't respond to Pat. If a teacher would call me Pat, I wouldn't answer. And that started when there was a boy in the same grade that I was in, and his name was Pat, and I thought he was a brat, and I wasn't about to be called the same name. So I just didn't respond to that. So I guess they figured that out. When I was in kindergarten, we made jam, and then we were supposed to be able to get to take it home on the last day of school. But of course, I was always switching schools, so mother or someone took me in, and the mother must have asked, and the teacher wouldn't give me the jam because she had to save it for some new child that would come. So she must have been a new teacher. She should have made extra jars. But anyway, I remember that as being disappointing. I was the kind of student that knew the answer but didn't raise their hand. And it was like, because I was always new. And I think, why doesn't someone answer these questions? Because it's like, it's not that hard. I was also lucky because I must have been a bit of a tomboy, because when you got chosen to be on a team, I always got chosen, so I never felt left out. So I had to learn that as a teacher. You know, you don't want to be the left out kid, but you don't think of it when you're the kid yourself and you're doing okay. I love to play on the rings. The rings went around like this, and I was really good at it. And I remember one time the bell rang because recess was over, but I was counting how many times I had been around, and I wasn't about to quit. And I remember the classroom was upstairs, and everybody, all the kids are looking out the window because I'm not supposed to be down there going around the rings. So I got into trouble on that one. I did go to the same junior high. I think I always say that saved me because I went all these different schools and I could live different places, but that was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So that was really good. So I did have friends that overlapped with church friends in those years. So those people I remembered, and they would remember me kindly. We had good times and things like that, you know. I was set to go start high school, and I went back east supposedly to take care of my cousins, but when I got back home, my mother had moved to Albuquerque, and so Daddy picked me up at the train station and took me to Auntie and Uncle George's, because that's where I went. I was this vagabond kid, but it didn't bother. It was a surprise. I didn't even know. And so I was supposed to start East High, but I hadn't done it. It was a very fancy, highfalutin school. That'd be like USC or something. But I ended up going to North High in North Denver. But I was only there a year and lived with Auntie and Uncle George. I don't have memories of that year of school too much. I played basketball, and I'm short, and I was a guard. So I remember doing that. And Uncle George took me to basketball games, high school basketball games, with friends. So he was really good. Daddy would have never done something like that, but Uncle George did. My church friends lived in South Denver, and this is fabulous. This is a super good memory. The Reverend Reed and my teacher, Reverend Reed was the priest, of course, the Reverend, and then my teacher was Mr. Clark. Those men traded off. They took me home after youth group all the way across the city of Denver every week. I didn't think much of it at the time, but that's a big deal. So they did that. I got there on the bus because it was still daylight. But then when I went home, one of them took me. I also got a scholarship to go to camp free. I was always getting something. I went to Campfire Girl Camp because I sold lots of candy. I almost frostbit my toes, but that I got money, so I didn't have money to do things. But if I worked at it, or I got like good people at the church, then I got to participate in things. So I really wasn't left out. So there's 10th grade. 11th grade was South High. That's when I met my boyfriend, the love of my life. That was 11th grade. And he was in the church group also. His name was Dave. And he got a car. That was a big deal. Geez, it was ugly. I could almost not be happy about it. It was a Hudson. It didn't have a grill in the front of it. It was this big ugly car. But then he got another one. It was a little convertible. That was pretty neat. At that time, I was living with Grandma and Grandpa Stafford. Forget North Denver. Now I'm in South Denver. So I lived with Grandma and Grandpa Stafford, and they just didn't want me living there anymore. I talked way too fast. It drove them nuts. Talked too fast and everything. And Johnny, the best thing that ever happened to my mother, said, that's it. She's coming to Albuquerque. So then I moved to Albuquerque. I got lucky there for some reason or not. It was first day of school. It was a brand new school. Everybody was new. They came from different schools, so they knew other people. And for some reason or another, they happened to take my picture and somebody else's that were registering, ended up on the front page of the paper. And then I got elected for all sorts of things. I was in drama club, and a boy next to me just elected me to be the president of the drama club. And we had to go out in the hall, and I got voted in. It was stupid. So I wore glasses, but I must have been sort of a cute girl, or why would people vote for me? Yeah, I don't know, because I was kind of conscious of my glasses. That was my senior year in high school. So my senior year in high school, I had a good friend that stayed friends my whole life. Her name was Joyce, and so we were real buddies, but it was first year for everybody. So that's the only person out of my high school that I remember. My baby sister, Johnny, who's my stepdad now, and I spent Christmas together because Mother was in the hospital. And so I think we went out to dinner and different things, and we went to the hospital, we went to a movie. What else? That was just really neat. I was a built-in babysitter for her, you know. That was great. I remember New Year's Eve. In fact, since I lived with him that next year, and she was just one, you know, I got her fixed up for New Year's Eve. I had fun. She was too little to remember. Johnny, my stepdad, is just a really, really wonderful man. And the only thing he wouldn't let me do is I wanted to be in little theater in college. And he wouldn't let me do that because his first wife was in acting, and she kind of played around with other men, and that's what happened to that relationship. So he didn't want me to have any part of that kind of life. He was wonderful, but you know, he had lines. Daddy Stafford couldn't care what I was doing unless I was going to that GD church again. So, you know, I kind of could plan my whole life. But he was different. So he was much more of a father figure, even though it was for a short time. And I don't think he realized that. I wrote him a letter about that. I've told him more than once. I went to the University of Colorado, and I should have had a scholarship because I had such good grades, but I didn't because no one in the family thought to apply for one. You know, it's just different people know what to do. What happened there? Registered late, so it was an overflow dorm up on the 5th floor of this one big room where several of us had one room. It was supposed to be a study room, but it was our room. That turned out to be really fun. Some of those girls had never seen it. There were 5 of us, never seen it snow. And again, you know, at that time there's no boys in the dorms or anything, and there's hours on when you have to be in. And that only lasted the first semester until people left school or dropped out, and then you got a regular room. I had so much fun my first year of college that I got put on scholastic probation. Here goes this girl that had these good grades and everything, but I used to memorize everything. College, you can't just memorize it, you have to learn it. So I got paid for good grades, so I thought that was what it was about. And anyway, that's when I met Papa. The way I met him was that they had what they called socials, and he was in a fraternity. I wasn't, because I would have pledged, and I should have, because I would have made some lifelong friends. But there again, it was the money thing, and I thought I would study more if I wasn't in a sorority. Come to find out about it, I would have studied more if I was in a sorority, because you had study hours. But instead, I got invited to every sorority's social party. So I went to a party every night of the week. You know, I didn't think about it. So I studied, but I just didn't do all that well the first year. It took a while to pull myself out of that hole. So that was my first year. Yeah, that was University of Colorado. And met Papa, and we got pinned. He was a Chi Psi, and then took the train back to Pittsburgh for Christmas, and then we got engaged. So, you know, and I didn't finish my schooling until I was older, and then I really did well. I graduated from college summa cum laude, and then which was wonderful. And then I got my master's at Berkeley. It was a reading master's, and that was just perfect for me. That was absolutely perfect. I had a girl, 4th grade, upstate New York, my first year teaching. Her name was Cindy Carr, and she was like a couple other kids taller than I was. And I had to give them tests. They did standardized tests the first day of school, and she just came with tears rolling down her face because she couldn't do any of it. And I said, don't worry about it. This is just something you have to do. I had this class of 34 students. I think I had 11 reading groups because I put them all where they needed to be. So my special memory of this, the reading specialist told me she would never learn to read. And so starting the school year, by the middle of the year, she had gone up 2 grades. Her father came in for, you know, parent-teacher meeting, and it was all he could do to keep from hugging me. He was a policeman. He was absolutely thrilled because she was reading on grade level. She just had to be taken back to where things made sense to her. So that's a good memory. I'm a Christian, and I didn't go to Sunday school much as a little kid because unless someone took me, or there was the church up the street, my cousin and I used to go, and you know, we just did it. That's another time I got in trouble. I forgot. It was vacation Bible school, and I guess I didn't tell anybody I was going, whatever, but that was a lot of fun because, you know, that was really a lot of fun for a little kid that didn't know many people or anything. And then, of course, I told you the experience I had with the 2 people that when I was in junior high, that was a Protestant church, actually wrote a sermon. There were 3 of us that were chosen to do a sermon, so that was a big deal. And I remember a couple of the ladies said they really liked mine because a couple of these boys that did a sermon too, they were already really intellectual. So they liked mine because they were just kind of ABC on why I have faith. So that was kind of a neat thing. Papa and I joined the Episcopal Church because Papa was Catholic and he wanted to be able to go to confession, which he's never done, but that's why we joined the Episcopal Church. And so you can be a Christian, but not really live your faith or know what it's all about. So it's been just in the last 20 years that I've felt like, you know, there's a divine guidance, and to be present. I lived most of my life being somewhere else, you know, just busy all the time and not just being kind of centered. But I really believe that we're taken care of, and I do believe that we are spiritual bodies having a human experience, and believe in the afterlife, but I don't know just what, because we don't know, but that's okay. And I'm just very, very centered and happy, and I really do like to help other people. So that's, since the last 20 years, we had a new church, and what I did right away was this is before the new church, how can I help you? That was it. How can I help you? Well, we need somebody to teach Sunday school. So it wasn't just teach Sunday school. I made myself the director of education because they needed to pull it all together. So I really was involved with that. And then we had a new rector, and he thought I should be taking care of older people and taking them communion. And so I became a lay minister. And so it's been a good trip. All beliefs are valid. There's different sects of things that are improper, that have kind of gone off the deep end. But, you know, God didn't create these things to be bad. We're the ones that have screwed up. So we'll get back on track, I hope. It's almost a funny, but it's true. I was on a ski lift, and it was fairly early in the day, and it was so cold. And I'm sure I was with a group or whatever, and my feet were absolutely freezing. And I just said a prayer. This was a miracle. I said a prayer for God to please make my feet warm. My feet became instantly warm, and they were not cold the rest of the day. Totally warm. I was absolutely fine. That was a quick answer to a request. And what I realized, that I told someone the other day, that I'm always thankful for things, and you know, gratitude. I seldom ask for anything. So I thought, oh, it's not a bad idea to ask for help and stuff. So I thought, that's interesting. I didn't realize I was doing that. I'll tell you, one of the most fun times I ever had was planning your mom's wedding. That was just so much fun, and there was so much to do. And because of your other grandma, it had to be a Catholic wedding, and of course we weren't Catholic, so this was a challenge. And then your dad was in the Navy, so we had it all planned one way at a certain date. And then it got changed at the last minute because of changing of the guard. And so we had to find another place. So it was really busy, but it was fun. It was fun putting that all together, and it was magical. That was a whole magical time of the wedding and the reception. I think we had a big ski weekend after that. We just did things together before Mom and Dad left. They left pretty soon. I don't know how all that worked out, but it did. It was just one neat thing after another. So that was a happy time. Happy time. I have to tell you, I thought you were going to ask that question. It came into my head last night, and I don't think of being proud. I actually thought about that. What am I proudest of? I'm resilient, I'm a survivor, and it's just, I'm happy. But I didn't necessarily do that myself. It's just, I'm happy that that's the way I am. I'm not sad about anything. Papa's a very important person in my life because we've been married for, I always have to subtract 57 years, which is, you know, unbelievable. Papa and I are totally different. And so it's what we were supposed to be, because it's certainly been a learning experience, but really, really important in my life. And when you think about it, it's really, as you go through your life, it's different people at different time. But I don't want to cry. But you guys, Kristen and Chad and Mom and Bradley, you know, and Sean, the family are the most important people in my life right now. And Father Rick, which was our minister in our church for the last, he's not been there now for, oh my goodness, maybe 15 years, but he was extremely important in my life. He's the person I would call like for a mentor or whatever still. So he's a very important presence on the spiritual side of my life. And of course, Grandpa, Papa, great Papa, yeah. And Mother, you know, Mother's always there. Mother's there. And Stephanie. I'd like us to both be a little healthier and to be able, I hope we can do a few really fun things that we've thought about doing. I hope we're able to do them. I always say it wrong. I always want to say Michu Picchu, Machu Picchu. That's a big, long, hikey thing. And Papa would just shake his head. But I hope that we can dance and have fun and go places. And of course, we won't have the energy we used to, but still hope that get the health in order and the back in order and all those things so we can do things. And be able to be around you guys so we're not too far off. You're successful enough so you can come see us.